as I can. So day 2, everyone. What is ahead of us today? Today, just a quick overview of our day, and then followed by a recap of yesterday. Today, we're going to take a close look to the font pairing matrix. Then we'll browse some fonts with our new improved vision. I'll give you some feedback right at the beginning. I didn't add this in the agenda. And after that, so just to break it up a bit and make it a bit easier and more casual, and also share some practical examples, some pitfalls, and there'll also be some time for a Q&A at the end. So let's quickly recap the most or the hardest part from yesterday, which was seeing typefaces. We also talked about the 3 different kinds of combining typefaces, which was, the first one was using font families or super families, which is the easiest approach. Second one would be going for large contrast, which means that things are very contrasting, that they don't get into each other's way. And in situations where we have to find something that's very similar or matches, the easiest approach would be to look at the construction of the letter shapes, which we will take a very close look today. But yesterday we already talked about how we can look or describe typefaces. And there was this concept of talking about letter forms and proportions. I did not mention yesterday that proportions also means the width of the letter shapes. So if you have a very extended or condensed typeface, this also comes into play. The X height, then the double story G and A would be also the letter shapes. You want to take a look at the axis and the stress, if there is a diagonal stress or if it's a vertical stress, how the strokes are contrasting, is there a modulated contrast which is transitioning from the thick to the thin parts. And we took a look at several typefaces here. The other one was Roslindale, and this one is very different since it's very contrasting here. You see that there's a vertical stress. The letter shapes are similar to the one before, but the X height has changed here, just to kind of explain what we see. And the first part was even more important, to describe what we feel when we see it. And in the discussion yesterday, we also saw or heard or read, whatever, that it's for everyone a bit different. And this is also something I did not point out a lot yesterday, but it depends on the industry and also on the cultural surrounding or on the place on earth where you are. Because when some typefaces or styles are used for something a lot, you will associate it with this topic or theme or whatever. So this always depends on where you are. I see things from my lens as a Austrian here, south of Vienna, and things look different for me when I go to the US or to Canada or to India or wherever, or to Syria or whatever. Yeah, things look different there to me because I'm not familiar with it. And this is also the thing we have to consider, and it also depends on the industry. If something looks very modern or bold or striking for a pharmacy or for an art institute, or performance art, so we have a lot of wiggle room there, and it's not one correct answer, just to remember that. And third example was one with a very simple monolinear typeface, sans serif, with a small X height, single story A and G, very constructed. You almost see no contrast or modulation. Very, very same, more or less, from the letters, from the strokes. Yeah. Okay. So this was a quick recap from yesterday. Now, I'm very interested, before we take a look at the first assignments, how did you feel with the assignment? Pop it in the chat. Because some of you send it in, appreciate that, because I really like sharing what the others did and also giving some feedback on it. Very friendly feedback, as I do. And let me see what the others are saying. I noticed that I lack experience with what typefaces are used in what industries. Okay, yeah, that's good, said Barbara. I really think this is what you might have to do research in your industry or things. Even if you're new or familiar with it, just doing some research for a certain industry before you start a project will help with that. I also have to do that. So good idea. Research is always a good idea. And you never want to do it. But once you really start it, it's fun then. It's fun. Okay. All right. So then let's take a look at one part. I'm sharing my desktop now. Where it is? There it is. All right. So taking a look at Finder. I have to find Finder. Where it is. Oh, there's Camo Studio. Too many open windows. There it is. All right. Okay. So first one here would be the mood matches. I really like, unfortunately, only one person sent in their mood matches, which is a bit a bummer because I think they're really fun and easy. And this one is from Mike. And he looked for floral and technical, a great combination, a great match. He used for the first adjective for floral, he used lobster. And for the other one, it was, what is it? Numum Gothic or whatever. I think this lobster is quite playful, floral could say, and the other one is quite technical, since it's more or less seeming to be very monolinear, simple, clean. The second one is hilarious. Henny Penny is great. I think you can only stand looking at this typeface for one word or something like that, because it's so expressive. But this would be the approach where you could say you could combine this with anything because it's very, very different. And the third one here is Emily's Candy. The name is hilarious as well, combined with Syra Condensed. Yeah, this combination here, I'm not so sure about that. I get the feeling of technicality for the second one, since the strokes are very constructed and also squarish. Look at the S, for example. This is rather squarish. And the other one is more or less, it looks like being lettered. But now I'm drifting off a bit because the problem I always have with these kinds of typefaces that appear to be lettered is that you immediately see that they are not hand-drawn once you see that one character is repeated and it looks exactly the same. This kind of destroys the illusion of it. But when it comes to floral or playful, I think it works. So, and he was not very satisfied with his combinations, as he said. Not sure, or maybe. Okay. So next one would be then second mood match. Also like that one. This is now old-fashioned and resting. Okay, for old-fashioned, BioRhyme extra bold. Yeah, this has some kind of old-fashioned vibe to me, since it is something where it was a slab serif, and this reminds us to this retro stuff. It's a bit too modern, though, in the details, where you can see that the E is more with this organic shape there, which is contrasting in itself, what I find very interesting. Then Catamaran Light would be resting. Also, nice association, sans serif, linear, calm. I think this is an interesting combination on two levels. You have a contrast where it would say this is very bold and wide, and this is very light and narrow. So you have two kinds of contrasts going here. And followed by that, we have something like here, what was this one? Tavir, I hate all these names. The serif typeface here, which is also very contrasting. I think this is a pretty good match, since you also have this connection between the very thin, almost linear strokes, and then the sans serif here with Manrope, and which is also very linear. And here, this is something where what was the theme again? Old-fashioned and resting. Yeah, old-fashioned grotesque, bold, extended works to me as old-fashioned since it's a bit quirky. It's not that clean like Helvetica, which also would be a grotesque, but a neo-grotesque then. But here you can see that these two typefaces should not be used in these roles, I think, because you have the grotesque, bold, extended. This wasn't the exercise, I know, but you have it in the large text, and you see the spacing is too wide. The letters, kind of, the line almost falls apart here. Since this, I think, would be better suited for some body text, or if you just reduce the tracking. And here, the Electra regular, it is too delicate, too thin, too contrasting in this sense for something that's smaller. I hope you can relate to what I'm meaning here. Moving on to the last one before we then go on, which was also the third mood match, fast and simple and fast. Okay, he switched it there to make it a bit easier when or how to use it, I think. So it's a good idea. You always can change the assignment if you can, let's say, give me an argument for that. What do we had? Platin bold and then din. So for fast and simple. I don't get the feeling of being simple or fast with this one. So no, it just, the second one, the din, yeah, this would be simple, but the first one, fast, not really, and not sure about the associations there. Fast and simple here again. Fast also would be, this is great, I think, the third match. Fast, most of them associate with something like an italic. Since italic comes from handwriting, fast, writing things fast, yeah, with your hand, and this it's also the tilt here. So you can really associate this more with something that's fast, yeah, I think. And simple, on the other hand, this would be fast and simple to me. The other one then wouldn't be either one of it, I guess. So my quick impressions on that. Okay, so then let's continue with some, that's also good. Mike said, Mittelschrift on Autobahn signage. Yes, that's true. In Germany, DIN would be used or something like that on the road signs in Germany. Also in Austria, but they're replacing that with something else, but they don't replace all the signs at once. This would be, insane. Okay, yeah, Austria is very fast. Not really, whatever. Let's switch over to the presentation again. Perfect. Okay, so feedback it was, and then we move on to next part. So now we're going to go deep. This one is the deepest part of the whole course. So brace yourself. After this part, you will say that, actually a good question. Do you think that these two sans serifs are a good couple? Do they fit together? Both are sans serif, same category. Birds of the same feather flock together. What do you think? Say it in the chat. Is this a good love couple? Are these lovers or are they not? Say it in the chat. Barbara says no to similar. Mike says no. Okay, yeah. John, no. Dex says good match. No. Too similar. Okay. Actually, they are horrible couple, because you will see this right afterward. Helvetica and Bodoni are much better lovers. But why? Why do I see this? And how do I see this? This is the whole question. You have to go beneath the superficial. And the question here is, do you really want to know? Do you really want to see? Because the matrix, it is all around us. These are lovers, but why? Why? You take the blue pill and you wake up and find yourself in your bed and believe whatever typefaces to see. But you could take the red pill and stay in Wonderland, and I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. So what pill would you take? What pill? Is it the blue one? Is it the red one? Say it in the chat. Michael likes it. That's good. Oh, let's go deeper. Yes.
I'm dying over here. I am dying.
It was the best Morpheus I could do. I watched the scene on YouTube. It's so theatrical. It's great. All right, so we take the red pill, we go deep, and what do we find? Do we find the matrix? We find the matrix. We find a new way of looking at typefaces. Yeah, I really like this approach. It's more or less looking to the superficial level, or thinking about the superficial level less, and thinking more about the construction and how things are connected to each other. And this concept talks about skeleton, flesh, and skin. I'm going to cover each detail, each layer step by step, and I'll explain it to you. But it's not something I came up with. I have to say that it's from Indra Kupferschmidt. She's a typography professor. I also had the pleasure to interview her for the Pimp My Type YouTube channel, which will be released someday. I hope I come to editing it. But it's really brilliant, and she explains it in some talks. It was also featured in the previous, or one before that, episode of the podcast, the Weekly Typographic Podcast, where Olivia talks about it. So this is really interesting. And she comes up with this concept because she also connected some kind of dots. And the thing is, everybody wants to categorize typefaces. Yes, okay. But why do we do that? Because we want to find out how we can find good typefaces. And it's a different approach if I want to put something in a shelf to sort it, or if I want to take out something when I need it. And in times of digital typography, one thing can exist in several places. So it can be more like tagging things and stuff. And there are a lot of ways of categorizing typefaces. And this very popular Vox-A Type Pi categorization system from the 60s or something, this one is very dated, since not a lot of sans serif typefaces were out there yet, and now they are the most typefaces we have. Sans serif is the dominant style, and this wasn't back then. So they differentiated between serifs, and are they bracketed, or are they wedged, and are they straight, and is it a Scotch or is it a transitional? But nobody ever would say to you as a client or as a briefing, please, I want to use a transitional. And the thing again is, things have different names in different cultures. In Germany and in France and in Britain, they call these words different. It's not the same language even. So Indra Kupferschmidt took away all this stuff. It's for historic purpose interesting, but not for combining typefaces or finding out what lies beneath them, looking at the skeleton and skin. So I ramble a lot, but now let's take a look at the first layer, the skeleton, the form model of your typeface. So let's see there. We have three different form models. The one would be the dynamic form model. The second would be the rational form model. And the third would be the geometric form model. We see this all the time. And once you are in the matrix, you will see this all the time. And the thing is, I even didn't really know about that or see that some weeks before, because I really prepared deep for this workshop. And then it was just like an epiphany. It's so cool to see this stuff differently now. And when we think about dynamic, it's from a diagonal stress. You can see that the angle in the letter A, you can see that there's an angle there. In the O, it's easier. We see this in details then as well. The rational shape would be a vertical stress, and then the geometric would be constructed. So it's seemingly monolinear. Don't think that the part here on the right side is a contrast or something. This is just an optical correction that the stem and the bowl or the circle doesn't look too thick when they get connected. So this is nothing that's intentional to make it, contrasting or something. So we have these three form models, and we see them everywhere. And the dynamic, we can also see them in the sans serif. It's more subtle, but it's there, and that's the interesting part, because the diagonal stress is still there in the dynamic. The vertical stress is still there in the rational, and the geometric, okay, this was sans serif before, because there are rarely serif typefaces that are geometrical. They exist, but they are very rare. So you see this construction is even here visible. In the middle, it would be Helvetica or something like this. And what is also very interesting of this form model is how the shapes are opened. So you can see in the dynamic form model, which a lot of people also say it's the humanist form model. It derives from that, yeah? With this dynamic form model, you have open apertures. And with the rational form model, you have closed apertures. So you see that the stroke is closing, and the aperture or the counters, the shape inside the letter, is not opened to its surrounding. And in geometric, you have more or less geometric, surprise, round shapes, yeah? So let's take a closer look. Here we have, again, sans serif, source, sans pro. We have these open, these are the characteristics of this form model. We have open apertures. We have most of the time a double story G, not always. Most of the time a double story A, not always again. And we have a diagonal stress here. We can see this at the O. It's harder to see since the contrast is very little. It's very linear. But the interesting thing here is, to this dynamic form model or humanist form model, we have some connotations or adjectives, we can say. It's friendly, open, approachable, flexible, natural, decorative, warm, inviting, personal, timeless, whatever. Always depending on the application, the industry, and the culture, of course, and then on the typeface and the other layers as well. But from the form model and how we mostly use it, it's from there. The reason for that, and Indra Kupferschmidt also explains this very deeply in her talk and other things, is how it also derives from handwriting, from the Broadnib pen. But I don't want to go there with the tools and stuff. I think this is rather advanced. It's sufficient just to see open apertures, double story G, diagonal stress, even in sans serif. Now, let's take a look at the second form model. We have these closed apertures. This is something that's very specific to typefaces like Helvetica or like Roboto, San Francisco. They opened them slightly there to make it more legible on smaller sizes for display, for the user interfaces. But it's not ideal for this application. It's just some kind of fashionable, because they seem to very rational, more restrained, closed. So when I take a look at some adjectives here, it would be rational, orderly, reserved, maybe a noble, elegant, serious, or stiff, correct, rigorous, authoritative. This all fits into this character only from its shapes. And then when I take a look at the geometric, which would be a Futura, for example. Here it's an objective by Dalton Mark. Super, super constructed forms. Circular A, G, P, O, whatever. Yeah. So you see these are very, very constructed forms. Single story A, single story G, open apertures most of the time. So this also has a very different vibe from its form model, which then would be translated to simple, technical, modern, functional, maybe sometimes also informal, cooler, systematic, sober, or modernistic, clean. Ooh, there's a double space before clean. Oh, sorry for that. Sorry for that. Horrible slides. You can leave the workshop. Get your money back. Whatever. So you see that these are the different vibes and things. Look at the T as well here. The T is also just very constructed like a cross or something, yeah? So, thinking about this form model, do you get what I mean? Do you see these things, or am I making things up because I'm so inside the matrix? Say it in the chat. It's also a great occasion to take a sip here. I see. Yes, that's good. I see. Makes sense. Nice. Okay, good. So we're all in the rabbit hole. Okay, let's continue. So you're also in the Matrix. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. As you said, John, yeah, how you can see this without this traditional classification. And this is the whole point, because everybody thinks sans serif on this side, serif on that side. But with this model, you kind of start to see that the serifs are just one layer on top. Yes, they change the mood and the vibe of the thing, but they are one additional layer. They are not the thing that defines it. And most people, it has to be a serif or it has to be a sans serif. There are a lot of crappy sans serif typefaces and crappy serif typefaces for a certain application or a certain vibe you want to create. And going away from this thing is super interesting to me. It was super interesting to me to find out. And this also makes sense with this, what's so often said, humanist sans serif. Humanist sans serif means deriving from this dynamic form model, from this handwritten form model, broad, nib, pan, basically the first typefaces, the first Roman style typefaces for upper and lowercase alphabet we had since printing evolved, since 500 years or so, a bit more. And then just without the serifs, Gill sans would be one of these humanist sans serifs then. Yeah. Okay. So now let's add another layer. We had this idea of dynamic, linear, and sans. So we just, it also describes it very beautifully. You say it's dynamic because the form model is dynamic. It's linear, we have no contrast, and it's sans, no serifs. Since we are now talking about the contrast and if it has serifs or not. But when we take a look at this with the serif component, you can clearly see this old style vibe with Garamond. And they are not that far away, except here you can also say the X height is different. Here it's smaller, the X height, and the vibe totally changes since it's more contrasting and the stroke is modulated differently. But we still have open apertures, we have diagonal stress, we have why ever the texture written in blue and not in red. I failed again. And, yeah, okay. And then on the other hand, we have this rational linear sans serif from before, as we saw it, Helvetica. And here, some sort of classicistic typeface like Bodoni. In this case, it's a Brill. And you can see they are so similar from their construction. And what we added was just contrast and serifs. We still have this vertical stress, closed apertures, high stroke contrast. We have some nice features like the drop at the A from the terminals or from the G. But you can see that the E, it's so closed. So it's very... But this also comes with the feeling of being noble. This could be noble, but it also could be more approachable. This would be more traditional to me, old style. In German, it's just Antiqua. Yeah. And now going to the geometrics, geometric, linear, and sans. And this is very, very common. Geometric, linear, sans. Serif is rare, but the other thing there is when you add something like more contrast and serifs, you get something like this. Baltica would be a typeface. This is a rare combination. We don't see this a lot, but it shows us that we can describe things that derived aside from a historic process. Also very interesting with this form model because we don't really think about it as something linear, that history evolves to a point and then it's done or something like this. This is so stupid since we live in an age where we take influences from everywhere, mix it together, and it's not clearly this or that. It's something of this or that, and it's not about really pinpointing it exactly in every detail that it belongs to that category. It's more or less thinking about, is it more in this or more in that, or a little in this or a little in that? But do you get what I mean? Yeah, it's not that stiff. And here what we see, single story G, circular bowl, constructed forms. And now we're inside. Now we see the matrix. Now we see how this moves from this linear, from this different form models. We had the contrasting serif in a dynamic form model, in a rational form model, in a geometrical form model. We had the linear sans serif in dynamic, rational, and geometric form model. And now we can even add on to that and see how would it look like with a linear serif. And then we have something like, on the geometric side, we have something like, for example, Rockwell or Memphis or something like this. Geometric, linear, but with serifs, but no contrast there, or almost no contrast there. And now this all more or less is an interesting matrix. On the other side, it also could be a contrasting sans. This is also very rare on the top left side, a contrasting sans that's dynamic, but it exists. Optima would be an example of it. It is not that contrasting. And in the middle, we have this rational form model again, contrasting sans and geometric. And now you see how these things all are working together. Do you see this? Do you see the matrix? Say it in the chat. Yeah, good question. No said to me, is no, Julia? Oh, the red pill is working. Yes, good. It's very new to me, but I like it, Barbara. Okay. Very good, Barbara. Okay. No, or Julia says that, hopefully Julia says, okay, how does this affect scripts? Well, there's an addition in the talk from Indra Kupferschmidt. I'm going to share the slide right away. It's a bit more complex. I simplified it because I think it's a lot to digest, even in this kind of way. Let me take a look if I can find it very briefly. There it is. Okay. So I'll share my screen again. So stop sharing Keynote and sharing desktop. Okay, so where it is? There it is. Okay, you see that. Yeah, how does this affect scripts? She said. Yeah, you could also say that this kind, she uses the word ranges. I think megatypos is much better. But no, ranges is fine because you have the same form models in a shorter word. But I want to stick to megatypos, have to brand it here on my side. But you can also think about the tool, how it was written from. And this is just a snippet from the thing. It's, as I said, more complex. But you would have the broad nib pen here with this dynamic form model. And then here you would have this pointed nib pen, where the extensions goes to the side with this like English script. And here you would have like, a kind of tool that has a linear stroke, which would be the more or less this handwritten style of fonts. So you could always combine him in that way. But I don't think it's really that necessary to know for combining fonts, because these kinds of typefaces or script typefaces are most of the time very contrasting anyway. So you can use it to combine it with, maybe anything. So let's move on to the part where, again, sharing. A lot of clicks to do that. How you can, what to learn about how to bear it. I have to jump back a bit. The thing that helps here, why do I want to know this or learn this? To be smart and say, yeah, cool, I have the matrix, I'm inside, it's a religion, it's a new religion, it's good. So no, I want to know this because it makes things easier to combine. Because when I know about the form model alone, it's easier to know. And if I connect anything within one column, it's most likely a good match, because the form model, the thing that's underneath it all, the skeleton, this is the thing that defines it. And this is the reason why things might fit together. There always could be an issue with width and also some details, but more or less they are related to each other because they come from the same construction, from the same form model. They are perfect lovers, aren't they? Harmoniously. What also works is when you use something that's very opposing, when something is used that's very different. So then you can say, oh, this is also interesting. And if you add a layer like contrast, like weight on top of it, you use something that's very bold and very light on one end, then you have an additional way to show contrast. This is also an approach to combine typefaces. Where it's getting, where it's more or less thinking about if this really works is when you use something that's in columns that are next to each other or that appear to be more or less the same or similar. And where it's most probably not a good match is when it's in one line. And this is the thing we saw with Helvetica and Futura. They appear to be the same because they are both linear, they are both sans, but their form model is very different. And this is the reason why this combination feels so off and weird. What are they? Are they friends? Are they foes? Are they same? Are they different? What are they? You start questioning yourself and your judgment and your life. So this is not good. Don't do that, really. Because is it the same or is it different? And this is this spot where you should avoid, or what you should avoid. Okay, so still following me. John says, went a little fast. I'd like to have more time and see the details personally. Yes, you can definitely check out the slides afterwards and watch a replay maybe. But also, we're going to explain these concepts in some following examples so that you get a better idea in practice then. Because this is very theoretical, and of course I picked some fonts that fit nice together so that this works out well in the matrix. All right. Okay, now let's get to the last level before we do a quick exercise here to shake things up again. The skin. And this is for finer differentiation. And this is where Indra Kupferschmidt says the first one, just a recap, was the form model, the skeleton, how it was constructed, dynamic, rational, or geometric. The second one, then the flesh would be the serifs and the contrast. And the third one now would be the shape of the serifs. Here we would describe, is this a bracketed serif? Is it a straight serif? Or is it a wedged serif? Or is it a crazy serif? Is it a split serif? Is it whatever, yeah? You can just describe how the serifs here look. Are these long serifs, short serifs, semi-serifs, sans serifs, semi-sans? Oh God. Yeah. Okay. Then we have also decorative features like stencil, inline, shadow, all this stuff you could add on in there. Just throw a tag on it, yeah? Is it something that reminds you of a Western, of a sci-fi movie, of horror? All these connotations here, throw them in on this last layer. So, for example, again, we had some dynamic, linear, sans serif. Is it sans serif? It says a very subtle bracketed serif, as you can see here. Yeah, and this is very, very subtle. So is it serif? Is it sans? Is it not? Who cares? There's something there. It feels to me to be more or less sans serif, but there are some serifs. But this would be a way how you could describe it. On the other end, we would here have, I just love Eames, the typeface. I love it, from House Industries. It's Eames Century Modern Stencil. This is very bold, contrasting, but you can still see that it derives from a rational form, this vertical stress. And you can also see that it is a stencil because it has these cutouts here. So you could describe that one. And still closed apertures, vertical stress, as I said, yeah, from this rational form model. And in this case, you would still say it's geometric. It looks super geometric. The G is a half circle or just half a circle. The A is a triangle. The O is almost a perfect circle. So it's very constructed. It's linear, but it also has an inline, which makes it interesting and a bit vintage and also a bit rough. You don't see this that clearly, but some wobbly shapes in there. It's not that exact. So this form model still persists, even though I added a lot of other layers of contrast and inline and whatever. And you can imagine that. And this could fit well together with Futura or something like that, because same form model, but other additions on top. So final question here. Does the matrix fit, or does everything fit into this matrix? Already said it. No, it does not. Of course not. Because there are many things where you will say, is this 1 or 2? Not so sure. But I really like the approach of looking at this and thinking about it. And seeing the typefaces from the form model foremost, and then seeing the other distractions on top. Yeah. So maybe this is a guideline. It should help you to see these differences more clearly. And this is what this is more or less about. So still with me, still following, and say, let's get going. We could take a short break for some questions. Were there some questions in the chat before we continue to our group exercise, then browsing some fonts? Waiting for Micah and Olivia. It's the same if there were some questions. I'm browsing them myself.
Hey, Oliver. I know there was a question, just to confirm.
See.
We're going to go over
okay.
the exercises.
So what about the misses? What was this question? From No?
Oh. Yeah, from Julia. Okay. What about MS or Ms?
Good.
The Ms,
then let me take.
What that is about?
Let me switch again here, and we'll move it over to the desktop again. And I'll pull over Google Fonts, and we'll do a very quick, just very casual, cool browsing around of some horrible, some nice Google Fonts maybe. So, and let's just type in wonderful mega typos. Let's use find mega typos. You always find some mega typos. We'll scale this up, and then we'll make it in this way. Okay. So let's not talk about the script typefaces since they are, we could find something in there. But looking at Roboto, I already said it kind of, but what form model do you think Roboto fits in? Is it, you can just say 1, 2, 3. 1 here would be the dynamic form model, 2 would be the rational form model, and 3 would be the geometric form model. Pop it in the chat. 2, rational, says Barbara. Yeah, that's sufficient for me. You paid attention. Bonus points here for you. Very well done, John, Mike, and Barbara. Thanks for paying attention. Okay, let's browse randomly and stop somewhere and see where we are here. Okay, we have PT Serif. What would you say? What form model does PT Serif fit in? 1, 2, 3. John says 1. Oh, whoops, says John. Yes. Dynamic, Barbara. I appreciate that you type it out, Barbara. Repetition always helps learning. It's cool. Yeah. John, I looked at the wrong font. Okay, dynamic. Very well. Yeah, it's dynamic. Clearly dynamic. Let's take the one above that. Quicksand. What would you say? Is it geometric, or is it rational, or is it dynamic? Which means 3 would be geometric here. Yes, geometric. I didn't say that. I wish I wouldn't have said it out loud. But you can say it is geometric, but the features they add on here, like the rounded terminals of the strokes, you see, these are very soft. And this also gives you the feeling of being approachable, friendly. It's not a cold Futura. It's something different. I personally despise Quicksand. Really, it's a horrible contrast. And but we have to cover it anyway. Yeah. So, okay, maybe this one. This is a bit crazy. Okay, what would you say? We can still just look beneath this distraction, this rocks inside there. What is this? But it's cool. Okay, what would you say here? Is this Rubik moon rocks? Is it rational, geometric, or dynamic? What would you say? So, number 2, rational, rational, rational. Very well. Yes, it is. You can. Do you see that you can see? And you can see, yeah? We can see that. We can see it's more squarish in this case. The apertures are closed. Even though it's bold, it's moon-rocked, we can see it. We're inside it. So again, I'm just scrolling down, stopping the cursor here. Let's see, what do we have? What do we have? Okay, archivo, narrow. Okay, it's narrow, this is the style. What would you say? Is it dynamic, rational, or is it geometric? Rational, rational, rational again, too. Yes, you got it. So below that, what do we have here? Play. Dynamic, rational, geometric, very squared, very squared. Okay, Mike would say here, rational, geometric, but kind of square. Geometric. Yeah, and now we come into these places where it's not that obvious. It's not that obvious. I would not say it's geometric though, because it's very, the geometric typefaces to me are these very constructed ones with circles in there. Okay, this might be then squares. We could argue about that. I still would say that this is something of a humanist because it's opened. It's very opened. The apertures are very open. The feeling that I get it's more or less a bit dynamic, but is it rational? So now it's hard. It's harder to say. You see, I even couldn't pinpoint where I would fit it. I would say, does it more feel to be here or there? So just to see also an example where I would say it's not that exact. Okay, do you want to do another one, or should we continue with the talk maybe? Last one? One more. Okay, Mike says one more. Yeah. So the John has some more examples. All right. Yes, one more. Okay, last one. All right. So, and then stopping anywhere. Okay. Interesting. So what is this when I do this one? Okay. Staatliches. Oh God, the name is insane. Okay, so there's something different. We only have uppercase letters here. So what do we have here? What would you say? Is it dynamic? What was the second one? Rational. And the third one would be geometric. So hard one. So Barbara says maybe the categories are more like extremes with gray areas between them. Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, sure. I picked some examples where there are extremes, but a lot of typefaces fit into one of these categories, more or less. Yeah. Rational. Yeah, I'd also say this is a rational. I also would say this is a rational from the feeling I get. And here we can say, is it more or less about the feeling? When I say the rational is more strict, it's more stiff, it's more restrained. And this gives me a feeling of being restrained. So, yeah. Okay, this makes a lot of fun. Here again, you could say this is geometric, it's monospaced. Yeah, here's space mono. And you could clearly see this is geometric. The E, the G, the A. So you can clearly see that. And here again, you can see, okay, this is, the E is rather open here, but here the O, you see it's a vertical stress. You would say, DM serif, this is something that's in the rational category again. But we could go on and on about this. And after this day, after this moment, you're inside the matrix. You will never stop unseeing this. And this is great because you start to see beneath the things and without all these conspiracy theories, which is also amazing. It's not only follow the rabbit hole in bad connotations nowadays, hopefully. So let's move back to the presentation. All right. Okay, I did that one. Only to go back to the desktop because I wanted to give you some more feedback on the combinations you sent in. Brilliant segue, Oliver. You did this very well. Okay. Let's share the desktop again. Okay. So,
this is good. Oliver, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think there was a mic issue before.
Okay. So you weren't asleep.
Right. But that was great. So,
all right. Okay, then let's talk a bit more about the other submissions that were sent in before we have some even more examples and some room for questions even before that, if you want to. So let me take a look at the submissions. Okay, thanks again for sending in the assignment. So what do we have here from John? Thanks, John, for sending in. He picked the mood modern. The industry was the finance sector, and I forced him to use Newsreader, and he did. So he wanted to make it modern, and his combination here was Furasans with Newsreader. And regarding the combination here, come on, Vorschau becomes smaller, preview. This is hard work. Okay, regarding the combination here, you could see that this one is really a nice combination, because what do we have? We have the same form model again with something. It's dynamic. Great combination, John. When we think of the form model, for the idea of making it modern, I would suggest using maybe Furasans for the heading. Just as we saw that this first impression and this first hit in the larger text more or less sets the stage. So this would be a suggestion to emphasize on this modern feeling, because even if this one, the majority of the text is set in sans serif, which is perceived more modern, Newsreader sets the stage and it's a bit more traditional. Yeah. But yeah, hard assignment. As I said, it's reality. Okay, so then second one was expensive swanky for architecture. Yeah, cool. So expensive swanky, good choice, very good choice. We have a contrasting serif like a Bodoni, like this, with a rational form model here, combined with a sans serif that's also with a rational form model, IBM Plex. Very good. What fits to Yoast here? And Yoast would be the geometric one. And here again, lines get blurry. The A is double story. It's not single story, but doesn't have to be. It's still the E, the G, the O is almost a perfect circle. You can still see that this is geometric with Yoast. And then you have Humana, which is something that is on the other side. This would be then more a dynamic linear serif. So you can see this, I think now. It's humanist, it's dynamic, and it has serifs, slab serif. And why do I think this works? The combination itself works because it's different enough, because it's from the form model it's different, but it's also with some serifs added. And maybe it's a bit too much for a lot of text, maybe, depending on the size, and for the combination it works. And what was the topic? Trending and natural sciences. Well, it's very confident. I think it's always something confident when you're using a slab serif. We stand our ground. We're confident here. And natural sciences, I think they always should be confident. It's a good mix. Okay, and then here INRIA serif, what fits to INRIA serif? And we have down to earth and agriculture and gardening. Yeah, what fits to INRIA serif? INRIA sans, very well done, John. You took the shortcut of using the superfamily. You found out that there's an INRIA sans. Very good. So this definitely works. So we have practically the first approach covered here with using superfamily. Nice one. Okay, then let's continue. What do we have here? We have from Barbara, thanks again for sending it in. We have significant, as the mood and the industry is woodworking. Okay, so significant. It's rather significant to use Museo Moderno and combined with Newsreader. Well, the combination itself works because they're so different. They are so different that, again, it works. If I get the feeling of significant and if it really fits the woodworking industry, not sure about that. It seems to be a bit dated because it reminds me a lot of the 70s and this stuff. But from the combinational point, they are contrasting enough to work together. All right, then we have here aggressive and fine art. Love that mood, Barbara. Aggressive and fine art here would be then, you used IBM Plex Sans in italics. You spaced them out a bit. Appreciate that, Barbara. Very well done, yeah. And then you set it in bold. So this, to me, seems aggressive. Cool. Below that, you use Corment, small caps. Yeah, does this work together? And here you can say, well, Cormac would be more or less this form model of being dynamic and IBM Plex being rational. This is not a problem so much since the italics of IBM Plex Sans are relating to something humanist. They are relating in cases to this humanist or to this dynamic shape, since they have a two-story A. They're not just slanted. There are a lot of details, But what I think really does not work here is using Corment small caps for body text. This is hard, brutal to read. You could say it's art, but. This really would not work for a lot of text. I get the feeling that you had aggressive. Maybe this is so aggressive then. But the application is a bit challenging, as I'd say. The combination, though, I think still would be contrasting enough, but I'm not sure in what situation it would then work. And also would be interesting to see IBM Plex there in uppercase. Last one, religious community and over the top. Brilliant combination, Barbara. Oh, fourth one from Barbara. It's not last one. Yeah, this is a very cool combination. I like it a lot because you have this monolinear vibe of Yost repeated in the heading. It's very delicate, though. It even could be set a bit larger. What's very cool with religious community, I think, is that it's a bit obscure. The letter shapes are some kind of weird. It could be the matrix of typography or something like that. Yeah, you really could imagine that. It's a big occult or something. Yeah, I like it. Works well. And what fits to Irina Serif? Well, Irina Sans, you found this out as well. What does not really work here is that I'm not sure what weight you used here for simple and textile. Simple fits because we have it in the heading. For the body text, I'm not so sure because it's very light, but that's the thing that comes with INRIA. I know that the weights are a bit too light for my taste, a bit too light. So not your fault, but maybe the medium weight here. I'm not sure a semi-bold or whatever would work better for the running text. All right, and now last one, submissions from, it works. Submission from Mike. So what fits to Newsreader? Zoom in a bit here again. What fits to Newsreader? For the mood of good value for money and the industry performing art and entertainment. Hard combination, good value for money. The performing art and entertainment is a very vague industry. It could be a theater or a museum or whatever. So a bit hard. But when I take a look at that, at the combination here, Mike sent in, we have at the same time something I would say is more here geometric. I think it's more geometric. You can see the G, the A, the O, but it's very soft. It's very approachable. And here it's very stiff and very formal and very classical. So I think they are contrasting enough to fit together. They would need a bit more space, and Newsreader is a bit noisy in this weight and this size again, but this is more about setting it for the combination. I think it works. If it's good value for money, I'm not sure. But this is the assignment, I guess. Next one would here be, this is more or less of an almost upright italic. It seems to be, because it's very slightly angled. Ernestine bold italic. The mood would be good value for money, again, performing arts. And yes, these are all very contrasting as well. You have, what I like is that the serif here, this from the uppercase I, it's a crazy serif, isn't it? On the left side, on the right side, it's a bit weird, but it kind of fits together in this way. And last one here or almost last one, this is very cool. I like this a lot because this is again very contrasting. You can see that it derives from handwriting here, from calligraphy. It's clearly something that comes from handwriting calligraphy, and it's about to mimic that. And then you have this very simple Yost, very contrasting. This would be the second approach, using something that's very contrasting. And yeah, if this is a theater or something, cool. Or a Shakespeare piece or whatever, it would fit well. And what fits to in real serif? Oh, oxygen bold. Okay, yeah. So what do we have here? We have basically, again, here's something that's coming from the humanist or from the dynamic form model, which makes it fit together. And not sure so much about the typeface itself. The question mark is weird with the weights and with the contrast here. Also, the FI ligature is weird. I'm not so sure about the typeface, but the combination from the form model and from the concept would work here. All right. So then I'll leave you some space for some questions if you want. And we have also some more examples later on. Are there any questions for now?
Hey, Oliver.
It's a lot today, isn't it?
I think we had a question.
I'm challenging you a lot.
Hey, Oliver, do you hear me?
High five, John. Yes.
Micah, can you?
Hey, Oliver, can you hear Olivia?
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you, but I don't hear Olivia.
Oh.
Very weird. Well, Olivia, what were you about to say?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's weird. Maybe I'm mean because I don't reply. I got arrogant.
That's all right. We'll figure it out. I think there was a question about how to research different type choices, Olivia, if
you say something.
For
You're frozen to
different
me.
industries.
Okay, hold on. Oliver.
Yeah.
There was a question about different typefaces for different industries. What was that?
How do you research them?
How do you research typefaces for different industries? Do you have any
what approach
tips on
I would use? Okay, yeah. Basically, when I do a project or I get an assignment by a client, it would be that they most of the time they did their own research, because when they have a product or something that they want to position in the marketplace, they most likely know what competitors there are. And I'll do my own research as well in that specific field, but I think it's more important to find out what kind of competitors they feel as their competitors, since they should or want to stand out. Or maybe they want to look similar to somebody who's already who has already established in that field. And if they want to, they can you can use something that relates to their visual language or to their typography or something, or there's a hint that's going on there. For example, when we had this era where, and we're still a bit in it, where every tech company on this planet had to use a geometric linear sans serif. So friendly and open and whatever. Yeah, everybody had to use this. Google did it, and and Airbnb did it. They all the same thing over and over. Now we're a bit more in this period of some quirky grotesques, which would be then the rational form model. And before that, we were in that period of this rational, of this dynamic sense service, like Lucida Sense. This was the user interface typeface for macOS before it was replaced by Helvetica, and then, thank God, it was replaced by San Francisco. So you kind of get a feeling or a vibe of these direct competitors, and you ask them about that. So this would be my approach. Is this helpful for you?
I think that makes sense.
Cool. Thanks,
John says yes, very. Sounds good.
That's good. Okay, yeah.
I think you're right. Like there are certain trends that go along with, like, as you were describing, sort of the cultural impressions that you might have.
Yeah.
Part of that culture is like the current trends that are happening, like the tech companies you're describing all using similar things.
Yeah.
So like trends come into play in that sort of research as well.
This is also something that is helpful, because when I want something to be recognized as, let's say, it's not always bad to use what the others are using, I want to say. Everybody wants to be super original. In some cases, it's not necessary or beneficial to be. If I want, for example, my kindergarten to be clearly visual as a kindergarten, it's okay to use Comic Sans, I guess. It's okay. It would be weird if they were using Bodoni. It would be weird. I would feel it always depends on the application. Or if my dentist would use Helvetica, or then I think, okay, nice, neat. If they would use Comic Sans, no way. Yeah. So there are all some, let's say, conventions, and use them if they make sense, and break them if you want to be different in that field, or make them slightly different. Maybe you want to belong to that group also. So depending on the project and on the thing, on the vibe. I had a project for an app where you do craft beer and stuff, and they used SF Pro, so the default and it really didn't look hip at all. Really not. And you could go in several directions with craft beer. You could go in this direction of black letter labels from German beer and this stuff, very traditional, lager, whatever. And then you could go in a direction of, hey, we're the cool hipster dudes and we're brewing here and let's brew and come on. And then you would use something very different, like a fancy grotesque, or basically whatever you like, what fits the topic and looks modern. And we took that approach just for the vibe and for the feeling. And typography is the main part of their product. So that's something that's important here to consider. More questions? Somebody called the typography police here, see? I saw Comic Sans.
I mean, I think that, well, that's funny. Comic Sans on an embassy is sort of funny. That honestly speaks exactly to what you were just talking about, of like,
yes.
You know, cliches exist for a reason, or trends exist for a reason. And so when it's so out of character for what the thing is meant for, that's when we start feeling like it's wrong, when really it's just drastically different because we have this idea culturally wrapped up into what that thing looks like or should look like.
Yeah, Barbara said something was up with Silas Lab yesterday. Yeah, there was something up. But that's a good segue into maybe the last part here. I'll show you some examples here, some more. And before I close with some pitfalls and leave you also some time for feedback, let me just take a look at the slides so that I find the correct one. Even more examples where we can talk about Silas Lab or not. Yeah, why not? So hitting play again. Let me share. So, okay, even more case studies. So many cases. You have plenty of case studies in the slides. So you can really, no, things are going crazier. clicked somewhere. I hit the computer again. So I'm just very briefly here. I don't want to be on that slide. So there are the cases. Really take a look at the examples in the slides. There are more examples in the slides I won't be able to cover here because I want to take the time to review your assignments, which I think is really much more helpful to you, of course. But there are more examples in the slides you can click through on your own. And I also added some comments there, also for the people on the replay that are not able to send in anything. Okay. All right. So I have a lot of people ask me about this on Pimp My Type. How can I combine this with that and these situations? And here was a situation where Montserrat was the given. It was required. And Montserrat, what is it? How does it look? And how does it feel? What would you say when you take a look at Montserrat? Would you say it's rather dynamic, rational, or geometric again? Looking at the chat. Okay, I'll answer it. Oh, geometric. Yes, rational, dynamic. Okay, we have everything in there. Yeah, I would say, again, it's not super clear, but here again, I would say it's geometric. Yeah, because you see the G, the E, the O, it's slightly squished, it's rather wide, but I'd say it's a geometric, or it's more feeling. It's got the feeling of a geometric. So my suggestion here was, and here you can say it's not that clear with that form model, but Barta would be clearly in this case, would be something that's more dynamic and also sans serif. But from the vibe it creates, it more or less looks like Montserrat, only squished together a bit. And here are these cases where you would say, never combine them in the same row. And this would be one example where I would say it fits, even though it would be in the same row. So always depends on the typeface, on the combination and the situation, because here when you use it in bold and there you use it in light, it's not that obvious. And then you would have the contrast of width again and wide, narrow. So would be my approach here. Other one here, we had Sillerslab. Sillerslab looks more or less, because it's also geometric like Montserrat, only attached with some serifs there, yeah, some slab serifs there. So would also work. Wouldn't work for a lot of text though, since it's a bit noisy. And now, here's the thing, Barbara, with Sillerslab. Wonderful, Mozilla Developer Network. Beautiful, yes? Very striking, very different, very confident and cool. But, God, no. What did they do? This is the new MDN. It's so boring. It's so soulless. It's so replaceable. What is this? What is this? Where's the vibe? Where's the feeling? And you could see this was from the typography. Bold, Sillerslab, cool. And now, what is the typeface even? I'm not sure. I'm sure it's something like maybe Inter or something. Yeah, whatever. So, other one here would be then combined with Montserrat. Again, Literata would also be very different. Here again, it's more on the side of, also here not very sure, is this dynamic or is this rational? It's something in between. You clearly have an angle. It's not that clear. It's not that clear, I'd say. Is it really? I'm not sure. They're different. Classical and warm, but is it really? Maybe Type Police would show up here again. If I took a look at the matrix and thought about it again, maybe it would be working. It would be working with PT Serif better, since this is a bit more restrained, straighter. But here again, it always depends on the vibe you want to create and how things should interact and should feel, I think. And last one here, another combination I got from somebody who was asking me, very trendy typeface, fancy, what is the Calicles? Yeah, nice name. Yeah. Very trending when we describe this typeface now regarding what we have learned. It's not so easy to say in what form model it fits, since we have a slight angle there. we have closed apertures, but since the apertures are closed, we have this stroke contrast. I would say, to me, it would feel very rational. How do you feel about it? Because it seems very strict and restrained, closed. So I'd say it's rational. Okay, rational. Yeah. Barbara says, you think the A feels open for this one? Was it for this one or for the other one? Looks like Optima. Yeah, it's very yeah, a bit exaggerated Optima. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Open A. Well, it's still closed here. I'd say it's still closed. It's not really clear. Yeah. You could say the stress is diagonal still. Yeah, truly. Not sure, but however, what typeface would fit there? I'd say something that's very rational would fit together with it in this vibe, since it's also very condensed here. Note the serif condensed, for example. But then again, when applied in the body text, it's very noisy, and I really don't want to read that. Oh, it's super noisy. So something else here, like note the serif semi-condensed. This is better, but still very noisy. I think this was a suggestion by him who sent it in and said, does this fit together? And I'd say, semi-condensed, also better. But what I think here would be this Muller narrow he sent in. This works better. And you could say, it's still a bit tight though, when I see it set in text. Still not an even typographic color for the body text. But maybe with general sense for a combination here, which would be also a very rational kind of typeface. This could be smoother, but is the color even very even? So you can see how you can go crazy with this. I wanted to show you that because you can go in circles and think. But the thing is, I always keep the one typeface. I always keep the first one because I have to set with one base and have to find something that fits there. So I'm leaving this up to you to decide what combination you find best. And last one here, I got sent in before I leave some room for the pitfalls we discussed and for some questions maybe to close this then, was the combination of, what was it? Precicaf combined with Sora, which are featured on Font Friday. And the combination she sent in, I'm not sure again about the name, I think it's a brilliant combination since you have very contrasting typefaces here. Both are in this rational category, and one is more extended and one is more condensed. So I think this is a great combo, width and weight contrasting here. Okay. Closing off with some pitfalls. So, as
there was
before,
one quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Oliver.
Please.
You had mentioned the word noisy, and Barbara was kind of trying to clarify, like, do you mean too much contrast? What do you mean by noisy when you're talking about that?
Yeah, okay, that's a good one. Noisy was, when I take a look, let's jump back here. Yeah. Your goal with typography is to have a more or less even typographic color. You want things to look calm for body text. It shouldn't be visually noisy or very active. And here, this stroke contrast in this size and also the condensedness of the typeface makes it very uneven. This looks very clean and this looks very confused even, yeah? So when you use something like this, when it's not that condensed, so the contrast is reduced a bit, it's a bit more calm, it's calmer. I hope you can see that. And the last one here would be then, if it's sans serif, it's still calmer. But in this case, again, I have the feeling it's a bit too tight. The stroke contrast is not, the strokes are not sturdy enough for that size. That's the feeling I get here, to make it an even color. Do you kind of get what I mean by that, Barbara?
I think if it helps too, I've always used the trick for determining, like color, I think can be a confusing term in typography.
Yes. So
if you sort of squint your eyes a little bit, does it look like even like gray bars as opposed to, some words look heavier and some words look lighter. And so it's kind of like that. Yeah. I think that's the color that we're referring to.
Yeah. Color is misguiding since it's not the color. In this case, this dark blue. I like to use this dark blue. Branding again. Yeah. Quick tip. But the idea behind it is to have an even typographic appearance. I only have to take off the glasses. This is brilliant. So this is why I'm short-sighted. The only purpose of this, I did it by intention. Then you see things blurred and you can see. Yeah. Okay. So.
Good choice.
Yeah. Right. Right on. Okay. So let's have some pitfalls here. So what I said, first, dare to make a decision. Thanks for submitting your projects again. You dare to make a decision. You dare to put yourself on the spot. But I hope you could learn from that and you could find some value in the feedback I gave you. But also for your projects, just decide for something and then continue on and see what happens. Typography police won't show up. Then again, a common pitfall, not having a reason for another typeface, since when the typeface is just there to be there or combined or why is there another typeface? So if you have a reason, a different role or something, then it makes sense again. Blindly trusting AI suggestions. So Google Fonts had this pairing suggestion recently. They removed it because they just said Roboto would work perfectly with Open Sans. And this is just nonsense because they just suggested popular font with other popular font. And people thought this would be a suggestion based on some ideas, or it was just random. You could just combine the most popular fonts with the other most popular fonts, but they didn't know. And so they removed it because it was so misguiding. But who still has it? Adobe Fonts has it, yeah. So when you take a look at Adobe Fonts, what do they say? Open Sans Light works perfectly with Candin Light. What do you think about that combination? Quick question for the chat again. I primed you, I know, but think about it yourself. Maybe it's a great combination, though. Is it? Is it a great combination? Give me the chat. Not a lot of contrast. Lol. Yeah. Too similar in contrast? No. Yeah, Bluebill again. Mike, brilliant. Too similar, no reason to add a second font. Yes, no, you said it right. No, Julia, I guess. Really, why should I use this font again? What's the reason for using them, for combining them? To load more data. If this is your reason, no, it's not. Okay, so again, this would be one. It's not different enough. This wouldn't be different enough. It's not same enough because in this case, it's slightly different, but it's not really different, but it's really the same. What is it? Yeah. So that's the hard one. And closing off with the thing, thinking too much. So this is a common pitfall. Now you saw a lot, digest it, apply it for next project, use the matrix, if this helps you, but don't overthink it. Decide for something, use it, and now you kind of train your gut feeling with that. You kind of train how you assess these combinations. Which brings me to summarizing this day. So we talked about skeleton, flesh and skin, these different layers of our typography. Sorry, talked a lot. And we talked about staying within one column in this suggestion and making it as contrasting as possible. So it all ties back to these things. Any questions about today? We already covered that, I think, and I think we're almost out of time. But for closing it off, I just want to say again, I'd love to hear your feedback on the course. So type it in the chat or send me an email, which would be easy because then I can send you a concise version of the matrix as a thank you, where at the adjectives as well, it's in the slides, but it's easier on one page and you can print it out. I'd really would love to find out what did you find most helpful during the workshop, or maybe what did you miss hearing about? This would be very interesting to me also to improve it, because I'm planning to do a course on that, an online course on that, where you can move through it on your own pace, which would be mostly about this content parts, but with more practices in between and some additional things and more details, which would be too much for this kind of 2-day workshop. 1.5 hours each day would be a bit too much. And just to find out if you enjoyed it, what was missing, and how do you feel now about combining typefaces. And having said that, I would really wish you a lot of fun, joyful moments with beautiful letters. It's a privilege that we can spend our time with wonderful things like typography, thinking about how we can shape our world and the messages of our projects and clients. And thank you for your participation and attention.
Oh my gosh. What a beautiful wrap up. Oliver, you're the king. I love it.
From the heart.
The comments have been amazing. Everybody's participating has been amazing. Oliver, you are amazing. Highly suggest emailing Oliver because I personally intend to take that course when it is complete. I'm very curious about what your course is going to look like, honestly.
Got a good
but yeah, thanks everybody for showing up and for being so awesome. Thank you again, Oliver, for equally being awesome. The recordings do sometimes take a little bit of time for us to get it together and get it uploaded and send them out. So we promise we will do that as quick as possible, and we'll include the slides that Oliver will send us just so that you can kind of go through and look at it in detail too. I think that'll be really useful. You should still get kind of a nice, happy follow-up email in about half an hour or so, just giving you all of these details, and then you'll get the real follow-up with the recordings as soon as we can get them out. We usually promise within 2 weeks, but I think we're going to be able to get them much faster than that, so I think that'll be good. All right. Olivia's staying quiet because of the mic issues, but... she sends her love. And thanks again, Oliver, and thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening. See you in the inboxes.
Bye,
everybody.
Bye. Thanks.